Hit the ground running with the most revolutionary personal training program ever developed. The National Academy of Sports Medicine makes it quick, easy, and affordable to learn on the go. Only at NASM.org. Click the link in the show description or call 1-800-460-6276 to become an NASM certified personal trainer today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of our Strong Mind, Strong Body podcast. I'm your host, Angie Miller, and today we are going to do a Tapas style of training. So you know how sometimes you're short on time, but you want to get some quick information, kind of like a quick bite to eat. So I have a friend, an industry expert on with me today. His name is Andy Hanley. Andy is the owner of Hive Performance. He is also an NASM Master Instructor and somebody who I like to call a friend. So welcome, Andy.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. Congratulations on this incredible podcast.
Yeah, well, you know what? And Andy's he's a good guy for brevity. He can give it to you in a nutshell and keep you wanting more. So I thought he would be the perfect guy for this segment. So in terms of Tapas style of training, Andy and I were talking about what are two things that personal trainers are kind of most interested in knowing. And they're both about programming. And the first one we want to talk about is programming made simple, because I think for a lot of trainers, one of the biggest concerns is they're spending so much time on programming and they're losing their minds thinking, how do I, have 20 clients on my schedule, but not spend, another 45 hours designing programs to meet the needs of each of those clients? How do I get my programming done short and simple? So Andy, what are your thoughts when you say, programming made simple? What's one of the first things that comes to your mind?
Well, the reality is, I guess I'm coming from a context of I've worked with high school football teams, professional organizations. I'm big on personal training. I've got quite a bit of experience in like the group fitness arena. So I've been in every trench and I know how challenging it can be to really fix your program around individual clients. And for me, when I got into industry originally, I used to spend hours upon hours really trying to fine tune my programming. And I really wanted to make sure I was delivering a really high quality product, quote unquote, to my clients, because you go through the education, you garner all this knowledge and you want to see how can I get all this done within this 3, 6, or 8 week program to make sure that ultimately my clients elicit the best results possible. What I quickly learned is, while yes, we need a roadmap and we need a framework, the reality is when we sit down and we write programs, it's our best guess. It's our current best guess as to what our clients or team, for example, might need 2, 3, 4 weeks or 5 weeks out. And that realization, it took me a few years to kind of come and hit home hard, but I found myself on week 3 or week 4 of a program, and suddenly I was overtraining some guys and undertraining others based on how quickly they adapted to the certain training, whether or not they've missed a few sessions based on illness or other issues. So programming made simple for me is like similar to what this podcast is. We talk about Tapas style training. It's programming in shorter, more consolidated blocks where we're working off smaller deliverables, and it's just easy for us to be a little bit more fluid and adaptable during the process.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you're writing out, like you said, these 3, 6, 8 week programs. It's like writing, when I taught university students, I'm writing a syllabus for an entire semester and trying to think ahead of what were those 16 weeks going to look like. It's that same concept, is that conceptually, when you have the science and the education, you think you can lay out this program, but when you're working with human beings, it ends up playing out very differently, because everybody adapts to the training differently, like you said. So for some, they ended up overtraining, and for others, they're waiting for more.
No, and that's it. I think you nailed it on the head. You need to understand, and it comes back to just periodization first. You need to understand it conceptually, but in my opinion, then learn how to apply it fluidly. And for me, it kind of it uncomplicates the process, so to speak. Because the reality is, like we look at the OPT model, for example, it's progressive in nature. Yes, we want to make sure that we're moving the dial, that we're moving our clients in the right intended direction, but there's also got to be a reactive element there. Like sometimes, as I said, unforeseen circumstances, some guys might be blowing through the program. And then just having that ability to kind of see it as it is, make adjustments and play calls, and really just coach on demand. So sometimes you've got to be willing to take a step back from the program and say, okay, I know the direction I'm on. I know my intended focus or theme or training emphasis of this day was X, Y, and Z. But I think my client's readiness to train today it's just not where it needs to be. And I'm going to, take action and do what I do best. And that's be a coach.
Yeah. And, I always say rigidity is nobody's friend. So, if we get married to a way of doing something and we get into that should mindset of it should look like this because this is what I had planned, then when we go in there and we're not very adaptable, we're not really seeing our client in that moment. We're seeing a plan, but we're not really being flexible. But don't you think that a lot of that comes from experience and time and, kind of that whole knowledge and expertise piece? Because it's really hard to think in the moment when you're new to training. Just like it's really hard to think in the moment when you're teaching a course for the first time or you're presenting at a convention. You have this game plan and then you get into the room and there's 50 people and you have all different types of questions and experiences going on. And so this plays into all different roles. But what do you think when it comes to those new trainers? What's their best recourse as far as being adaptable in the moment?
That's a great question. And it's true, while we need to be adaptable, we still need to have a plan. It's like if I'm leaving from Fort Lauderdale to drive south to Miami, back in the day we used road maps, now it's sat nav, whatever the case may be. We know where we're going. Now there might be an accident on the road, there might be a detour, and we've got to make adjustments. And training for me, it's very similar and it's no different. Yes, we need to have a program in place. So any new coach coming into the field or whether you've been in it a few years, you need to have that because that lays the framework and foundation of where you're going. But it's just, for me, I'm kind of blessed. I'm just pretty intuitive in that I see how well my clients are responding to stress. I can read body language. I'm also communicating during the session too. So objectively, I know what I want to achieve. But then there's that subjective level too, where I'm asking my guys how they're feeling. I'm asking, can you rate that last set on a scale of perceived exertion? And with this information, it allows me just to make more informed decisions regarding whether or not we're going to do our sixth set, or whether we're going to pull it back and just leave a little bit more in the tank for tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. It's just, you don't have to throw out the whole thing, but you do have to maybe adapt little components of it. And you're right, rate of perceived exertion versus, we said we were going to work at, 80%. Well, how does your client actually feel in that moment? And maybe it's okay to let go of that sixth set and do something else in between, or maybe have a longer rest period, right?
Completely. Yeah. And that's where you start adjusting or manipulating the acute variables. And that's what makes our job so fun. For me, programming and strength training on a daily basis or a weekly basis, it's this game of stimulus and response. It's our job to apply stimulus, and then depending on how well we do it, will determine how well their body responds to it. So in that moment, on the fly, we get to make these game time decisions. Now, other ways you can do this is, let's say, as per our textbook or what we've learned calls for, we're now in phase 2 and we're looking for 3x10. Well, you might program 3 by 8 to 12. And what that does, it gives your clients autonomy to say, well, I'm feeling pretty good today. I don't want to stop at 10. I've got 2 more reps in me. On another day, if they've come in and they're a little underprepared or their readiness to train isn't where it should be, they might make that decision to auto-regulate and stop at 8. So there's different kind of tools and tactics that we can use as coaches to, give our clients ownership of their program as well and make it more of an involved process.
Yeah, I think that's 100% because I think empowerment is key. I think that when it comes down to it, when it comes down to the nitty gritty, they need to have a say in some of that. They need to feel like they're taking ownership of that program. And a lot of times if you give somebody the option and you say, I'm going to let you, if you're done after set 6, that's okay. Then they're like, oh no, I'm going to show you I can do one more set. But if it's more of like resistance against resistance, then sometimes people are going to want to bow out because they feel like they're being forced or they feel like you're pushing them beyond what they're capable of.
No, completely. And that's it. And that's why we talk about coaching. It's the art of communication. It's the art and the science. Like we know what sort of training overload or stimulus that we need to apply to get said response. But it's also being able to just make those adjustments and read the situation for what it is. Some days our guys are going to come in and to your point, they're going to want to go harder. And sometimes we just have to support that. Hey, when you're on, we're on. We'll out that extra work. Other days we need to know when to back off. And that's just the nature of this being, that's why these guys hire coaches. We're there to guide and facilitate the process. We're there to lay the framework, lay the roadmap, but ultimately they're the driver and they should have input into how they want to take that session on any given day. And that comes down with, just as you said, it's empowerment, it's them taking ownership, and also it's just educating, like, this is the phase of training we're in. Here's why we're doing it. Here's what you should expect to experience. This is how I want you to kind of self-monitor and regulate your efforts, because this is the training outcome we're trying to get. And what happens then is, when it becomes a two-way process, you'll find just through communication and collaboration, training results tend to increase a lot faster. It really builds buy-in and build rapport between the coach and the client.
I love that. I think that's important that you say that too, is just that educational component is, it doesn't have to be a secret what phase 2 is. Why can't our clients know exactly what phase 2 is and understand what we're expecting in phase 2 so that they have a better understanding of what the ultimate goal of the program is, right? So our deliverables match. It would be like me, teaching a college course, but not giving them a syllabus. They don't know what to expect. And so that's kind of a disconcerting feeling when you're not really sure. I always like for things to be explained to me so that I know what you're expecting, because then I want to see if I can deliver that.
Yeah, and then really the process becomes a lot simpler. So we talk about programming made simple. What does that mean? We know there's big rocks in any session or weekly program or monthly program that need to be addressed. Once we do the big rocks, now it comes down to those small pebbles, and that's where we can be a little bit more fluid and adaptive. And on certain days, we can allow them to use their own creative liberty. And it doesn't have to be this regimented, rigid system. Because the reality is, as I said earlier, 2 weeks in, you might as well tear that up because it's changed. The landscape is constantly changing. And we've got to be able to adapt to that, as you said, and just kind of mold our sessions in alignment with the direction we're ultimately trying to go, but also in alignment with, how our client's feeling on any given day. So programming made simple for me is just this idea of, we have a plan, but we're allowed to waver off it. We bring our clients into the conversation and we let them dictate where we really go. So for example, if I'm in stabilization phase and today I want to squat, I might say, hey, what tools do you want to play with it? Is it a kettlebell? Is it a dumbbell? Is it a barbell? Is it a TRX? And then based on their feedback, I will just coach on demand and we'll get that particular tool because I know the pattern I'm trying to get at. Now, the tool we use and the method at which we orientate their body to the ground or the load to their body, that's all stuff that we can play with. And for me, that's where my coaching, I think, lately has really advanced, in that I know what I want to get accomplished, but how I get there can be very fluid. And it just makes the whole process a little bit more seamless and enjoyable for the client. And it really does save me the aggro of just sweating over every little minute detail, because I know on the day I can make those adjustments and the client will thank me for it if they're a part of it.
It reminds me of that roadmap that you said at the beginning. There's a lot of different roads to get to the same destination. So if you're going to do a squat and your client understands what phase 2 is, they have the option of doing a squat with the TRX or the kettlebell or whatever you want. And like you said, then you can vary it as far as execution and the tools that they use, but a squat is a squat is a squat, right? So I want to reintroduce, by the way, if you're just now tuning in, this is our Strong Mind, Strong Body podcast. I'm glad that you joined us. I'm host Angie Miller, and this is my guest, Andy Hanley. He owns Hive Performance in Fort Lauderdale. And Andy's also an NASM Master Instructor. So we're doing Tapas style of training. We're giving you 2 short segments, kind of like Sports Center style. And right now we're just talking about programming made simple, because it seems to be, the most creative part of being a fitness trainer, but also sometimes the scariest part when you're first starting out. So, Andy, if I had to sum this up, I would say that, understand phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, understand what those are, design your programs, but have some latitude. Don't be married to the program, and give the client some autonomy and some flexibility. So it's a little bit of plug and play. It's like, these are the exercises that I want to do, but I can plug in different tools and I can allow my clients to have a say in this.
Completely. And look, training doesn't have to be that complex. As I said earlier, keyword, it's a game of stimulus and response. We're trying to get minimal effective dose. It's the same way any business, when they bring a new product to market, they're looking for minimal viable product, something that someone will buy, it will serve its purpose, and they'll be happy with that purchase. Essentially, that's what we're looking for, especially for new coaches come in. As long as you're, this minimal effective dose, it's as long as they're having a good experience, as long as you're really going above board with your coaching and your delivery of said program, the program really is not as important as people think. Because for a lot of clients, especially clients coming from inactivity, and I've heard this for many years, like they'll all get better on the world's worst program if it's coached well. And that's the reality. So yes, while we all strive to write really good, clean, progressive, thoughtful, directive programs, which is everyone's goal, it's how we deliver it, and it's the experience and the application and how all that's packaged really will determine client buy-in and ultimately the successful outcomes of the program itself.
You know what? And I think that's probably the most powerful part of this whole thing is that's 100%. And you even mentioned exercising in groups is they don't remember what they're doing. They remember the experience that they're having. They remember how well you're coaching them and if they feel successful throughout the experience. They're thinking about how they feel, and that's what you're talking about as you're working them through those exercises. You're talking about how they feel. You're talking about what it's doing for their body, for their mind. And it's all that coaching. It's all that mental feedback that, basically increases their mental acuity and makes them very aware of that whole experience as a holistic thing that's happening. Not just this is what I'm doing with my body, but this is how I'm feeling, and this is the results that I'm going to get. Completely.
And when it comes down to program design, don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
Simple. Simplicity is key. And it sounds so mundane and cliche, but it really is. And the longer I've been in this industry, and I'm in it, 15 or 16 years now, I've gone from spending ridiculous amounts of time on programming to really tailing that back and focus on just how I'm communicating with my clients and their experience. And then time, it will happen naturally and you'll learn. You can get a lot more done with a lot less. So I've my exercise library that I used to have 300-400 exercises is now down to 20 to 30 key bedrock exercises. And then I just introduce different variants of that based on my client preferences.
Right. Because really the secret sauce behind the whole thing is relationship building. The secret sauce is having that relationship with our clients and making them feel successful. They'll come back and do absolutely anything if you build that kind of relationship with them. So, if we're going Sports Center style, we're sticking to our 15-minute time frame and we're on a Tapas style dinner here, we need to move on. So we need to talk about those clients who insist that they want to go hard or go home. So again, I'm Angie Miller. This is Strong Mind, Strong Body. And my guest is Andy Hanley. He owns the Hive Performance in Fort Lauderdale. So we are talking about now, what about those clients who insist that they are just an elite athlete and everybody from your general population wants to come in and they've read about what it does to do all this intense programming and they want to burn calories 5 minutes ago. How do you talk those clients off a ledge and say, you know what, how about if we think about this in a smarter, more, with longevity in mind? How about if we talk about keeping your knees?
That is key. And we talk about longevity. We talk about sustainability. Ultimately, guys, why do they train? They train for two reasons. Some people use it as more of a cathartic release. We've got those individuals that, oddly enough, outcomes are secondary. They just need some way of just releasing energy and stress. Other guys are training with an intended purpose. Now, there's a big issue with the industry lately, and it's this idea of people chasing fatigue. And we know as coaches and trainers, our whole goal is we're fatigue managers, right? We're trying to manage fatigue and not necessarily seek it. Well, at least all the time. And what happens is you got quite a few clients that'll come into my facility now, whether it be personal training clients or my group fitness facility in Fort Lauderdale, and they've got this go hard or go home mentality. And some guys are just naturally competitive, and I understand that human element. These guys, it's an arena where they can quantify progress. They want to come in, they want to get after it, and every day is go, 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 go. Now, whether or not that's in their best interest, we'll talk about that in a second. And then other guys, they just don't know any better. They're uneducated, they're misinformed, and they're a product of their previous environment. And you talked about keeping knees, and while I see value in all different training styles and arenas, there's a certain population demographic of the fitness industry that this mindset of go hard or go home and leave it all on the floor every day it's really prevalent. And it shaped a lot of guys' thought process in terms of, what I need to do in the gym to elicit, the desirable responses or outcomes that I'm looking for. And that's something that as gym owners that we've really got to contend with now. So I'll let you take it from here because I could keep going, but we'll double back on my thought process regarding how I think we can best address that.
Well, one of the things that came to my mind when you said chasing fatigue, and I was like, isn't that our society? It's like, running the gas tank from full to empty, or, just constantly burning the candle at both ends, needing to push, because if you're not stressed, you must not be doing something right. And it's this whole mindset that, I need to lose 20 pounds 5 minutes ago, and everything needs to be done quickly, because I think for a lot of people who come into fitness for the first time, it is this, there's going to be a beginning and an ending point. And I'm like, I hate to tell you this, but if you're doing fitness for life, there is no ending point, right? Just the way we go into all good things in our lives, whether it's a marriage or a relationship, I hope that we don't go in thinking there's going to be a beginning and an ending point, right? I don't think we start a job thinking, when is this going to end?
No, completely. And look, if we're why do people train? Some guys that are athletes, yes, they have definitive timelines or deadlines that they need to be at peak performance for. I get that. Our everyday individuals that are training for health and wellness and fitness related gains, it's a race without a finish line. And what happens is these guys, I think you nailed it, they're looking for instant gratification. I need it now. But the reality is, anytime people train, we're applying stress to the system, and we know this. Now, our goal is to create an environment of good stress and positive stress, not distress. And there's a difference there. When people feel like when they're in the gym, they need to be in this constant state of fight or flight. And the reality is it's wrong, and it's actually hurting them long term. And there's a quote that's gone around there for years. It's like the best session is one that your athletes can actually recover from. And that's key. So when we're training, could you imagine if that transcended across every area of life? Like when we're in the car, it's go hard or go home. I got to get to work as fast as possible. No, we've got to put the brakes on. We've got to change gears. We've got to, move through the lanes. And this is no different. And it comes down to just, like I said, it's clients not really fully understanding what it is they're trying to achieve. And it's the responsibility of the coach to inform them about the process. Hey, we're in this phase. This is what we're trying to achieve. We're not going that intense with our weights in terms of relative load, but the exertion level is going to be high. And what this is going to do, it's going to build strength endurance. It's going to build the load bearing capacities of your connective tissues, that when we do get to that level, your body's going to be in a better state of preparedness or readiness to tolerate and handle that heavier weight. Now these guys, they're understanding why they're doing what they're doing. And what happens is when you don't appreciate the human element and you're not giving these guys this information, they're going to relate to what they know. And that's, if I need to get in shape, I need to just go hard. And it's definitely an issue that's out there mainstream, and it's something that coaches have to contend with on a daily basis.
Yeah. Something else that came to my mind when you talk about that, it goes again back to that whole coaching element. So again, I'm talking to Andy Hanley, owner of Hive Performance, and he's also an NASM Master Instructor. So if you're just tuning in, thanks for coming into the Strong Mind, Strong Body podcast. We are talking about, everyday clients mostly who want to go hard or go home, because they really want to get fit fast, because that's kind of the mindset of our very, very competitive, fast-paced society. But Andy, you hit on a couple of key points there with this whole coaching thing. And that is that it really is up to the coach to take away some of the old ways of talking to our clients that we used to use, right? That whole just do it mentality, or come on, I know you've got more in there. It was a lot of that was driven by the coaches. A lot of that mentality that is still lurking around in fitness actually came from the leaders of the industry.
Completely. And it's sad, this whole culture of like no pain, no gain. And that was, I feel like when the industry was born in its early stages, that was coaches, in my opinion, trying to show self-worth and validate, this is why you're paying me, because I'm going to put you through a level of pain that you can't put yourself through. It's redundant, it's irresponsible, and it's just flat out wrong. Let's take professional athletes, for example. These guys rely and depend on their bodies to make a living. They're the elite of the elite, and they don't go hard or go home every day. They understand some days it's going to be high threshold days, other days they've got natural deload and recovery days. And these guys have access to resources that we con folk just don't have in terms of recovery and all of this fun stuff. So, it's crazy to think that we as kind of general population guys that enjoy fitness and enjoy working out think that we can push our body to redline our body 5-6 days a week and expect it not to break. And the reality is, in time, it's just not sustainable, and it's going to lead to breakdown and degradation of health. And that's I think that's, people are starting to open their eyes now. People are realizing that there's a big difference between fitness and health. And fitness it's task specific. Like, you can be fit to run a 5K race or fit to run a marathon, but you might not be healthy. You might be suffering with plantar fasciitis and calf pain. You look at CrossFit athletes. There's a reason it's the sport of fitness. Anytime you play a sport, there's a voluntary assumption of risk that you're going to get hurt. if you compete in the sport of CrossFit, you're going to get hurt. So people see these guys on the TV and they look like modern day Spartans and Trojans. And again, the top 1 or 2% are freaks, but that's the top 1 or 2%. The other 98% of people, their bodies just can't tolerate and mitigate against that level of repetitive stress. And we've seen, I hate to say it, CrossFit related injuries go through the roof. And my 2 businesses down here have thrived because of it, which is unfortunate. So yeah, it's a tough one. Like, how do we go about managing these clients that want to go hard? And even with education, some guys they still don't want to do it because it's in them. And that's where we need to start, just being a little bit more creative with how we structure our program. And so I've got one client in particular that he just loves to get after it. And I let him, right? But what I do is I make sure I'm challenging different systems every day. Like if it's weight and it's loaded one day, the next day it's going to be cardiovascular training. Then we might do some level of power. So I'm always giving his systems time to down regulate and recover while we go hard or go home on another system. And we're just kind of playing with that jigsaw. But the reality is it's not in your client's best interest to adopt that mentality. There's days where we need them to put their foot on the gas and get after it, but they've also got to learn to appreciate, and coaches especially have to learn to appreciate that deload days is where the magic happens. It's when we give our clients the opportunity to actually relax and adapt to the progressive nature of the training that we've exposed them to, that they're actually going to see that positive net return.
Yeah, and actually give their mind and their nervous system time to calm down enough to actually feel what their body is experiencing and feel the difference between those training variables and what they're going through and how they're responding, how they're recovering. But I find that interesting too, that you say that that's one great way of doing it, is that if you do have that client who is extremely insistent on going hard all the time, then at least shift what they're doing. Then one day do power, one day do focus on more flexibility, one day focus on, cardio, like you said. At least shift the way that you're training them so that they have that recovery time, so to speak. But I do think that a lot of it has to do with us as coaches and how we are educating them and how we're speaking to what's happening in their mind as well as their body. And also that we keep talking about fitness as a lifetime endeavor. And so we don't need to get there quickly. We just need to get there safely because we want to be in this for the long run. And so there might be times in our lives where we can go harder and go faster. But then there's going to be times when it's probably not going to be in our best interest. So...
No, completely. And as coaches, we got to think laterally and sometimes just remove the linearity of training. If you've got some guys and they've only got one speed, we need to take account of that and then just adjust what we're exposing them to, And it's always, anytime I give a presentation, I talk about, managing training workloads and dose response. I always liken us coaches as toasters. And I actually took the privilege of burning a slice of toast just for you today. So this is what we're chasing, right? We're chasing this. This is an athlete that is well taxed, or a client that's well taxed, but has the ability to recover. And as a result, they're nice and fresh. And this is the desired outcome we want. Guys that go hard or go home every day, there's going to come a point in time where their body just can no longer tolerate the heat and that stress. And they're going to get quote unquote burned out. And that's just the reality. So sometimes when you speak to your clients in color, and I've used this analogy so many times and it just resonates with people. So as coaches, we are responsible for turning up the heat in that dial. And we've got to know when to back our clients off because, the end result is exactly that. They're toast.
You know what? I love you even more as a friend and as a colleague for actually toasting 2 pieces of toast and showing us that analogy, because you're right. Visualization sticks out in people's minds. It really does.
Mm-hmm. No, it does. It's a powerful thing. I don't know where I read it, but I read it years ago. And it was about just talking about when you're coaching, the value of just coaching in color and using analogies. And it really does help because we have a habit of when we're speaking with our clients of speaking in certain jargon that they don't understand. But sometimes when we can take that complex science and just relay it in layman's terms through the use of analogies and visual representations, it can be so powerful, so powerful.
Yeah. And I also think especially for, when you're finished training, there's a certain way that you want people to feel. And I think you need to educate them about that. So if it is, a day where you've really got your foot on the accelerator, then you're going to talk about what they're going to feel like when they're finished training. But if it's a day where you're training for a completely different outcome, you're going to talk about what that outcome is going to be. So that if they leave and they don't feel like they're burnt toast, then you can let them know that's because I didn't want you to feel like you were burnt toast today. I didn't want you to feel like you needed to put your foot on the accelerator so much that you didn't have anything left to give. I mean, we have to educate them on what we want this outcome to look like.
Precisely. And more importantly, coaches need to educate themselves. And that when we're working with our clients, we're constantly trying to manage this idea of fitness, freshness, and fatigue. And these things, there's an interplay that happens. And we know if we go too hard for too long, fatigue accrues. And what happens is that limits performance, their readiness to train drops. And now just the quality of their training is not where it needs to be. And then when we start talking with and that's something I do, is like when I sit down with my clients, be it my pro athletes or my everyday clients, I show them the plan. This is our 6-week plan. This is where we're going. However, on the way, you are going to have different experiences. Sometimes it's going to feel sore. Sometimes you're going to leave here feeling frustrated because you felt like you had more to give. But that's because you see 48 hours later, this is what we have in store for you. And it's just when they can better conceptualize the journey that you're putting them on, and you give them a little insight into this is why we're doing what we're doing, you'd be amazed at how quickly people start buying into. And one technology I've used now is just heart rate response. Like my clients love the fact that they can see in real time and get that feedback in terms of heart rate response. Because now what we're doing is we're planning recovery off that. They're regulating their outputs off it. And now they're becoming their own coaches. So I kind of wind them up. I say, this is the outcome of today, whether it's cardio hit or high intensity, steady state training. And this is what we're really trying to do. They're self-governed. And for these guys, it becomes really enjoyable. And luckily for me, we start getting closer to the outcomes that we want because these guys have made the decision that they want to take ownership of it, you know?
Yeah, I think actually I love that. I think that was probably one of the best golden nuggets is just being able to show them that 6-week plan. And again, talking to them about how there's going to be variability in the programming because they're going to have a say and you're going to be able to plug and play a little bit as far as tools. But at the end of the day, there may be days that they go home and they might feel like they have more to give, but that's because we have the bigger plan. This is what's coming next and we're getting ready for that, right? It's like getting ready to pack up for that trip that you talked about earlier. You got to pack up a lot more stuff if you're going on vacation for a week versus if you're going for a day. So you got to get your body designed and ready for what's to come. And, you know, what's to come isn't going to be something that you're going to do every single day, right?
Precisely. Look, energy is not this infinite resource that we have and you can come and lay it all on the line on any given day. So you're hiring me because I understand the energy pathways. I understand what it's going to take to get you to want to be. And you've got to trust that what I put in front of you is in your best interest. And I'm going to trust that you are going to do what I ask of you. And when you kind of lay that out and you let them know and you set expectations on the front end, even these not hard gainers, but these guys that want to go hard every day, they're going to come in and you're going to say out the gate, hey, today's a 7 out of 10. Oh, okay. But don't worry. On Thursday, I'm going to let you get after it. And there's just enough collaboration there that these guys understand, okay, I'm going to get what I want soon, but let me just kind of pay my dues today.
Yeah, I love that. You know what? Today's going to be a 7 out of 10, but it's coming. I love that because you know what? That sets up expectations, and those who really want to go after it, it's just something that they can really look forward to. So you know what? The common theme. So again, I was talking with Angie Hanley. I'm so glad you joined us for Strong Mind, Strong Body. This was our Tapas style of training. So we did a couple segments here. We talked about how to make programming simple, and then we talked about what about those everyday clients who want to go hard or go home. And I think that the theme of both of these, Andy, is empowering our clients, really talking to them, educating them, making them feel like we are a collaborative team here. I'm not the boss. I'm not the one with all the answers. We're a collaborative team. You're in charge of your body. I am just here to give you a roadmap and we're going to go there together. So it's about empowerment and education and not being so tied to a program that we can't be adaptable and flexible in the moment. So you know what? I really appreciate all of you joining us for our Strong Mind, Strong Body segment. And Andy Hanley, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your tips and all your wisdom. All right.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.